So you have worked on both Java along with Spring Boot. Have you worked on microservices too?
Yes, yes, I have also worked on microservices.
Okay. Apart from that, can you just tell me which version of Java you are using?
So we're using Java 1.8 and Java 11. So now we're using Java 11.
Okay, okay. And apart from this, for your microservices, what kind of event driven or which kind of an approach you're using for inter-service communication?
So we are actually using both synchronous asynchronous communication for microservices, and we're using Fain and Driven for synchronous communication, and we are also using REST template, HTTP client API, as well as we are also using Kafka for non-synchronous communication.
That's great. Okay, fine. So
Yes.
what I'll do is I'll just start with the core Java and then we will move on to Spring Boot and
Yep.
micro.
Yes, sure.
Okay. So okay, can you just tell me what is a class loader in Java and what are the different types of class loaders?
Yeah, I guess there are three type of class loaders. So class loaders are basically are the base classes which has to be loaded before running or compiling any of your application. So I guess there is a bootstrap class loader, system class loader, and application class loader. So bootstrap class loader is the base classes which is required to up and run the JVM, and then like it runs all the classes available in rt.jar, and then you are having application and system. Application class loader are the classes which are there in your class, which has to be compiled, and then system class loader is the classes which is required, like your lang package and all. So that is present in rt jar slash lib. So what are present in the lib folder, these are going to load those classes. So I think these are the type of class loaders are present.
Okay. So are you aware of the delegation principle that is there?
uh, no, I am not aware of that.
Okay, no problem. Yeah. So okay. So there are two things, right? Path and class path. Do you know what is the difference between path and class path?
um, Class path and what else?
Class path and normal path.
Class path, I guess you have to have those jars or dependencies in your class path in order to access that in your application. And about the path, I'm not sure. Path, that means that the URL path, which are you talking about that?
Yeah, so actually path is something that you provide as part of your application, like somewhere you provide path. So that is basically for the reference of your operating system, that is that particular path. And if you talk
Okay,
about class
yes,
path, that is specific to JVM. So
yes.
JVM uses your class path, it just has access to your class path, and it actually uses the class path to locate your Java binaries so that it can operate on those.
Got it, yes.
Okay, okay, no problem. Yeah, so okay, fine. Okay, can you tell me what is transient in Java and when it is used?
So transient, I think it is used in serialization process. So if you are, like transforming something, and you want that some properties of your class don't be transferred or don't be take part in the serialization process, you can make it transient. So you can use transient keyword along with that, or you can also use static keyword along with that, so that those values will not be transferred to the destination class. So in the destination class, when you are deserializing the class, you will get not get the exact values which you are serialized, even though you will get the default values for those properties.
Okay, fine. So suppose I have a scenario where I have a parent class and I have a child class.
Okay.
And you know that if a parent class is serializable, the child will automatically be serializable,
Yes,
right?
yes, yes.
There are certain things that I do not want to serialize as part of child class. Or first of all, okay, how are you going to restrict if suppose I have one parent class and my child class is extending my parent class? So how are you going to restrict the child class? I don't want my child class to be serialized. So how you are going to do that? Any idea?
I think I said that like we can use transient or static.
Transient you cannot use with class. You can use it with the member variables only.
Okay, got it. For class level, I'm not sure how we can restrict.
Maybe in the constructor you can throw some kind of an exception or something
Okay,
like that.
okay, okay. So
Or
yeah,
you can, yeah, override the
yes,
write object method, and inside that you can throw the exception for
got it,
that.
got it.
Yeah, that is fine. So, okay, can you tell me what is a garbage collector in Java?
So garbage collector actually what it does is it periodically check what are the objects are there which don't have any reference in the application. It used to collect those objects and eligible them for the garbage collection. Yeah, so we can request the compiler for the garbage collection, but it don't guarantee it. So we can do it by system.gc by calling the system.gc method, and it what it does is just remove all the unnecessary objects from the heap memories.
Okay, so as you mentioned that it is not necessary for the garbage collector to run whenever you do a system.gc. So what are the alternative approaches that are better than using this system.gc apart from this?
So what we can do is if you want to implement something which will clean your code or close the resources, you can use I guess finally block we can use, and we can define those resources to be closed. I think that will be the alternative for this.
Yeah, and you can also use this. Yeah, try with the thing as well. Yeah, fine. That is okay. Okay. So, can you tell me what is the internal implementation of hash set?
So if you know hash set is the basically don't allow duplicates. So whenever you are going to add any element to a hash set, first it check the hash code. It take the elements hash code and check in the list that check in that set whether that hash code is present or not. If the hash code is present, it is not going to insert that element into the set. If the hash code is not present, then it will check the equals method. It will check for the equals method with that available elements in the set. If the equals method returning false, then it is going to insert the element into the set, or else it is not going to insert in the set. I think that is the internal implementation.
Yeah, yeah, that is fine. That is fine. Okay. So, okay, fine. So, do you know what is an enum in Java?
Yeah, it's enum is just like a class, but it is having like fixed set of properties. So whenever you want to have some fixed set of properties, you can go for enum, and it is having some advantage over the classes that it is more reliable and reliable in the basis of security. So we cannot have reflection to. Sometimes what happens is through reflection we can duplicate or so for that purpose we can go for enum, which will be restrict reflection to get a copy of the that object.
Yes, yes, correct. Yeah, that is fine. So, uh, okay, fine. So, do you know like what is actually how many? I mean, there are two ways, right? Extending a thread, creating a thread, like
Yes,
extending the
yes.
class and using runnable. So, which one is preferred amongst the two, and why?
Yes, I think yeah. I think we can extend the thread class or we can implement the runnable interface. But yeah, the simple answer is we can implement the runnable interface as we'll have the option to extend other classes later on. So I guess that is the advantage of implementing runnable over extending the thread class.
Yes, yes, correct. Okay. Okay, do you know what is the difference between like countdown latch and cyclic barrier in Java?
Yes, yes. So the difference in countdown latch and cyclic barrier is in the countdown latch, once the latch count goes down to zero, you cannot use the countdown latch again. But whereas in cyclic barrier, you can reuse the cyclic barrier. So that is the difference between these two.
Okay, okay, yeah, that is fine. Fine. So, okay. So, what is okay? Suppose, do you know about lock interface?
Yes.
So, can you just tell me what is a lock interface and its implementation, and in which scenarios it is better to use locks over the traditional synchronized blocks?
Yes, yes, got it. So if you see this lock interface, we use this one in the reentrant lock. So we are having reentrant lock and read write lock. What it does is it provides some fairness parameters, like some basis on some parameters we can lock and we can unlock, which will not get it in the synchronized block if you are going to use synchronized block. So there is method that if you can create a reentrant lock object, then you can use the lock method in there, reentrant lock object dot lock method, so that portion that block will be get locked and only one thread will be able to access to update that object.
Yes. Okay, fine. Okay, fine. So, can you tell me the difference between what is a race condition and what is a deadlock in Java? What are the differences between the two?
Race condition, I'm not that much aware, but yeah, deadlock condition happens sometimes if you will have circular dependencies or if you have multiple threads. One thread is trying to acquire some resource which is acquired by some other thread, and that thread is trying to acquire some resource which is hold by this thread. So in that scenario, it get like scenario arrays. But I'm not sure on race condition.
No problem, you can go through it. So, how to avoid a deadlock situation in your application during the development? I mean, how to take care of it? Because definitely this is something that
Hello.
a particular coding that can be
Got
resolved
it.
by coding practices. So,
Got it. Got it.
how to avoid those?
So first of all, we should go through the code and we need to check whether like where is the deadlock condition are there, and there is some other approaches also. We can go for thread dumps. We can check our J console and we can get the thread dump. And from the thread dump, we can check which resources is getting locked, and that resources which we can check in the code and can remove the deadlocks. That is the best approach. Like we can go for the JMX, J console, and we can check our thread dumps, and from there we'll get to know where is the deadlock condition happening.
Okay, yeah, that is fine. Fine. Okay. So, fine. And what do you mean by auto boxing in Java?
So AutoBoxing, I think AutoBox and Auto Unbox, yeah, it is related to the wrapper class. So previously we was used to have integer, string, integer, and long, but then sometimes we require the object, not primitive type. So to convert the primitive type to object type, we need to use AutoBoxing. And yeah, so this wrapper classes is the example of this AutoBoxing. So we are having integer, long. So these are wrapper classes of these respective primitive types.
Okay. So, have you worked on executor framework?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So, where have you used that in your application? Can you just tell me the small utility of it and the flow, how it works?
Yeah, so we have used it in different scenarios. One was for cats, to loading the data into the cache and retrieving the data from the cache. So in that scenario, we had used executor service. Along with that, we used executor service for the auditing purpose. So for auditing purpose, it is not depend upon the main thread execution. So we created different executor and we provide the number of threads. So that does the auditing for us. So in these two scenarios we used.
Okay, fine. So, can you just tell me what is the basic difference between executor.submit and executor.execute method?
I think that the basic difference between two is submit method is going to give you the future object, whereas execute method is not going to return you anything. And from that future object which submit is going to return you, you can get it the result later on when the computation is complete by using dot get method.
Yeah, sure. Fine. I think that is fine. Okay. So let's just move on a little bit to the design pattern. So can you tell me what all design patterns you have used as of now?
So yeah, so I have used singleton design pattern, factory design pattern, abstract factory design pattern, builder design pattern, and template design pattern. I guess these are the design pattern, and mostly like these are the creational design pattern that we I have used.
Yeah, yeah, that's fine. So can you tell me what is the basic difference between abstract factory and factory design pattern?
Yeah, the abstract factory design pattern is the superset of factory design pattern. So in factory design pattern, what happens is if you are dealing with the big scenarios, larger scenarios, you should go for abstract factory design pattern, because in factory design pattern you if you are like it's a subclass of abstract factory design pattern. So in our case, we used this factory design pattern to create the object for different widgets. So we used to have different type of charts like graph chart, pie chart, histographic chart. So to create those objects, we use this factory design pattern. We're just sending the name of the chart which we required, and that factory is going to create that whole pie chart object for us and return it back to us. So in that way, we used factory and abstract factory design pattern.
Okay. So as you mentioned, like you are using factory. So factory is something where the entire, object creation is actually dependent on one particular class. That is a factory class where you have certain checks like which particular implementation you want to invoke. So what
Yes.
is I want to clarify a little more with you in terms of some example. So if you talk about factory design pattern, so you have a factory class where you have a lot of checks where you take the decision of which particular implementation you want to invoke. But in
Yes.
case of abstract factory, it is not dependent on one that particular factory class. So can you just give an example, of abstract factory design pattern, like how it works?
Sure, sure. See, in our case, as I told you, so we are creating different widget for our dashboard. So in our dashboard, we are having pie chart, graph chart, histographic charts. So for that chart creation, we used one factory pattern. Along with the charts, we also having some different, dimensional information. To create those dimensional information, we also use another factory design pattern. And including these two, we created a pattern that is abstract factory pattern, which is going to create you both the type of chart you want as well as the information for that chart, like the dimension, the radius, the color of the chart. So for this also, as I said, that we are having multiple factory patterns to create the same object, but then we bundled all the factory patterns together and we created an abstract factory pattern, and through that only we are giving them the fully initialized object.
Sure. Yeah, yeah, sure. Fine. Okay. So, fine. Okay. This is fine. It's microservices. So, can you just tell me like what is the overall flow of your application a little bit into in terms of microservices and how you are actually scaling your applications on the runtime? Have you worked on that part as well?
Yes, yes, yes. So I'll give you a brief description of my application and how we have decompose this application into microservice format. So yeah, this application which I have worked is a Spectra application, is a product. So we are actually creating a base component or generic component which is helpful for the business user to take a decision, actionable decision, we can say. So there we created one component that is called dashboard, which is kind of analytics visualization layer, where we are showing all the visualization components to the customer. Along with that, we are having one component which is going to interact with the database, that is we call as result set database. Along with that, we are having component that is totally responsible for authentication and authorization. So that is one totally independent deployable component we created, and one more component which we created that is for analytics and order segmentation module. So these 4 5 modules are work together as a microservice, And the other part of scaling up and down, we used both Joule and Ribbon for scaling up and down, as well as we are creating the Docker images for that, and we can deploy multiple images of the same application for scale up or scale down purpose.
Okay. Yeah, that is fine. So, how do you like? You mentioned you have different applications for scale. Which kind of environment you are deploying your application?
So see, for our development purpose, we are using CentOS server, and for the client purpose, they are using AWS.
Okay. So, on your setup, you said you are using CentOS, so that is an operating system. Any other thing apart
Yes.
from that you are using, like Docker, Kubernetes, or something like
Yes,
that?
we are using actually see we are using Jenkins for deployment as well as Dockers.
Okay. So how do you scale your application in Docker? Like suppose, for example, at one particular time, I have like, for example, one instance of each of my application running as part of microservices, right?
Yes.
So if you want to scale your application at runtime, like I want out of 10 applications, I want three applications to have like, for example, three instances each.
Okay.
So how do you do that at runtime? Any ideas?
Uh, I'm not sure, but I think that through Docker images we can deploy multiple images of same multiple images of same services, but I'm not sure on that.
Okay, sure, no problem. Yeah, that is fine. So, if you talk about like you mentioned that you guys are actually using Kafka and REST, right, for inter-service communication. So,
Yes.
I was just curious to know, like, suppose if a particular application, all the applications of yours have three instances each, and one application is sending some kind of message to another one. So this one application also has three instances and the other one also has three instances. So how are you managing that that particular message is already read, is only read once and not multiple times for each of the instance, and it behaves properly?
Got it. I think I'm not sure on that. No, Manse, I'm not sure on that.
No problem. Like in case of Kafka, you can actually manage it through consumer IDs, and similarly for REST also you have to make certain changes. So yeah, maybe you can just
I will go
go
through.
through that how it works in a high availability
Yep.
setup.
Sure, sure. Yeah.
Sure. Okay, so if I talk about like Kafka, so how you guys are actually, you are using, I mean, how you are actually using it? You are using from one service, you are creating some kind of consumer IDs and some listeners into the other service, something like that. How it is going on?
Yes, we have created Kafka consumer and Kafka producer configuration in each of the services, which is going to consume from the topic, which is going to produce to the topic. And this Kafka config, producer config, we have set the bootstrap URL and key serializer, value serializer, and we are using Kafka template to. It's kind of sometimes we require some data to be present in the topic, and from there some microservices is listening. In that scenarios we have used, and similar things we have configured in the services which is going to listen. So we configured Kafka listener configuration, and from that it is going to consume the messages.
So like you mentioned you are using Kafka template. So when you do a Kafka template dot send and
Yes.
there is this topic name and the data that you are sending. So do you have like are you using it for completely asynchronous that you do not get any response from the other service, or you also have included something like customized kind of things into your service,
uh,
like having
no
some kind of
in
timeouts and things like that?
in our case we are not expecting anything, like we are not expecting any result out of that. We are just putting the data into the topic.
Okay, okay, okay. That is fine. Yeah, fine. So okay, fine. And now, like coming on to this security part. So how are you managing like security? into your particular application?
So in our case, we are using LDAP based authentication. We are using SSL based authentication, and we are using JWT based authentication. So these are features that we have provided into our base component. So yeah, these three ways we are authorizing and authenticating the services and users.
Okay. Okay. Apart from this, suppose, for example, you have a microservice, multiple microservices that are running, and for example, I have how can I say, like I have multiple microservices that are running, and I have a client that is making a request. So it usually lands on so you have something like gateway service discovery and things like that, right?
Yes, 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 yes.
A
Yeah,
request,
yeah.
so a request comes on from my you can say client to my this entire thing. Like first of all, it lands on the gateway where it is authenticated and things like that. So how do you manage if some service that is that is not responding or that is down? So how do you manage that timeout period?
Okay, see for this case we have implemented Hystrix circuit breaker. For this purpose we are using Hystrix circuit breaker, and in the Hystrix circuit breaker we are defining the fallback methods. In the fallback method you will have the properties like you can set the timeout milliseconds, and you can also define the number of requests. So if my last five request is going to fail, so it is going to hit the default method instead of that particular method which is going to fail. So in that way we are handling fallback methods.
Correct, correct. Okay, so you mentioned circuit breaker. Can you tell me in detail what is circuit breaker design pattern?
So if you see in circuit break design pattern, what it does is, so from microservice one or microservice A, and you are calling to microservice B and B to C, and somewhere some microservice is going to fail. So instead of sending, you can send a default message, or what you can do is you can define a default fallback method, and you can define the Hystrix properties. If some of your request is going to fail, then it will be automatically activate that circuit. It will break the circuit and it will call the default methods which you define. So you will get a default values, or you can configure anyway with whichever is suitable for you. You can define that, so that what will happen is when some service is down, so if you like last five services getting down, or the success rate is not that much what you are expecting, or after three or four failure, if you are getting again success response, then that's fine, it will not do anything. If you are continuously getting failed request or timeout issue if you are getting, so this will be activated automatically.
Okay. Yeah, yeah, that is fine. Fine. So, have you worked on application monitoring and performance management as well?
Yes, so for application monitoring, see, for service monitoring, you can go for actuator, and for the application monitoring, we are using Jenkins. So from the Jenkins dashboard, we used to check the logs, as well as we also use CloudWatch. So from CloudWatch also you can do both the things, like you can check the services health as well as you can also check the applications logs.
Okay, okay. So, are you guys using Spring Cloud Config Server as well for, I
Yes,
mean, or
yes,
something
yes,
equivalent to?
yes.
Okay. So, can you tell me how does it work and what are the benefits of using, centralized configuration server?
Yes, so first of all, definitely we should not have to keep any configuration file in any of the microservice. And what we are doing is we have just created GitHub repository for all of our configuration, as well as all of our static data which has to be loaded, which is required by the UI to load at the page load up time, startup time. So this configuration we have already kept it in the GitHub, and we have configured both config server, as well as we have also configured those things in our microservices. So what it does is simply what it does is it give a like uniform. So sometimes what happens is somewhere you change something and you forget to update those things in another services. So here what will happen is all the services is going to fetch the data from the GitHub, centralized GitHub. So then that will be, the services will be externalized. You will get a single view of all the properties, and it will be more helpful in the security purpose also. So for that we have used config server.
So do you for example, you configure something in Spring Cloud config server and all the services pick up those properties initially and start those services
Got
and
it.
they work based on those properties. And if you know, you can also at runtime change those
Yes,
properties
yes,
to Spring Cloud config server and they will be reflected in rest of the services. So how
yes.
does this thing works? Any idea about that?
So for that, I guess you can use Spring Cloud Bus. So Spring Cloud Bus, what it does is whenever you do any changes in any properties file of any microservice, it just fire a event to all the instances of that microservice. So the update which you did will be reflect in all the instances. So we can go for Spring Cloud Bus for this purpose.
Yes, yes, correct. So because of that, it actually helps a lot
Yes,
in.
otherwise I think you have to do manually one by one service. You can use actuator also slash update, but that is not a good practice. So we should go for cloud bus.
Yeah, CloudBus automatically does it for you. You have to get it configured. Fine.